Hello ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to VUX World, the Practical Voice Podcast. In this episode of VUX World, we take a walk down memory lane. I'm joined by four of the Alexa champions, Steve Arko, Tim Kahle, Nick Schwab and Eric Olsen. These guys were Alexa champions way back when. I think Steve was part of the first crop of Alexa champions. And so we take the opportunity to have a little bit of a walk down memory lane and discuss what things were like when these first started creating skills for Alexa. What was the ecosystem like? What was the community like? And we kind of just take a trip from then, 5 years ago, all the way through to today. We look at some of the most notable advancements and some of the things that got them most excited over that journey, some of the kind of signs that let them know that things are working really well. And then we kind of discuss today. We discuss the community today and then looking forward to the future as well. What do they want to see? What do they expect to see from the voice community and the voice ecosystem? It is a really lovely chat. I'm really appreciative of the guys joining me for a catch up at Project Voice, and I'm sure you will love it too. So before we move on with the interview, I'd like to say a special thank you to ReadSpeaker for sponsoring this episode of VUX World. ReadSpeaker have been creating custom text-to-speech solutions for over 20 years. They've got in-house expertise in artificial intelligence and deep neural networks. They've been building and developing custom voices for worldwide global brands, and it's unbelievable. I mean, they cover 30 languages, 90 different voices. So if you're looking for anything that needs text-to-speech voices, whether it's IVR systems, any kind of conversational system, voice assistant applications, automotives, robotics, public service announcement systems, learning platforms, websites, anywhere you need text-to-speech, ReadSpeaker have you covered. Check them out if you haven't already. The link to the website to find out more information is on the website, and it's also in the show notes. Now, without further ado, this is Nick Schwab, Eric Olsen, Steve Arko, and Tim Kahle on VUX World.
VUX World. VUX World. VUX World. VUX World. Branding with the big faces. I love listening to it.
Kane Sims.
Kane Sims, the one and only.
Britain's finest, Mr. Kane Sims.
Dustin Coates.
I like it when you guys are together and talking about voice.
Without further ado, welcome to the show.
So, here we are at Project Voice, and I'm joined by, as Tim just pointed out, 4 Alexa champions. Welcome and thank you for joining us. We've got Tim Kahle of 169 Labs representing the European contingent. We've got Steve Arko of Big Sky, and we have Eric Olsen of 3PO Labs and Nick Schwab of Invoked Apps. So chaps, welcome to the podcast and thank you for joining us.
Hey, thank you.
Wow. So you lot are Alexa champions. And when did you become Alexa champions? Yours was not recently, but I remember you, Tim, put a video on Twitter of you circling around Germany. And did you get a tattoo?
Yeah.
Was it a real tattoo?
Yes, of course it was.
Really?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't. But it's been kind of a story around Twitter. Yeah.
So when did you become an Alexa champion?
I think in March or April 2019.
Right.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Steve?
Yeah. I think it was 2017, whenever the very first batch of Alexa Champions of 10 came out. I was in that first batch.
Wow, one of the first original Alexa champions. So the first 10?
The first 10, yeah.
Wow, first 10. And Eric?
Yeah, likewise, I was in that first 10. I think it was springtime 2017.
Wow. Nick?
I was in the second batch. I think it was early 2018, maybe.
Wow, cool. Okay.
They started just giving it out to anyone.
Right. Quality went downhill.
Yeah, fair enough. So when did you first start building skills then, Nick?
My very first skill I launched in, I believe it was March of 2016.
Right.
And that was back before the Alexa Skills Kit was even a thing.
Really?
Back then it was called, I think, the Alexa SDK.
Right. And what was that then? What was that in comparison to the skills kit?
Honestly, I can't remember. It's been so long. Building my first couple skills with it, it wasn't a big challenge. There was a lot of great example code out there. A lot of the concepts were still the same, right? The syntax was just minorly different. I built Bargain Buddy on that. I built Opening Bell, which is the first skill where you could actually look up a stock price using a company name. I built that skill in like a few hours, so it wasn't a big deal at all.
Okay, and so when did the Alexa Skills Kit when was that introduced? Do you know?
I think it was June of 2015.
June 2015.
I think they had announced that there was going to be some stuff before it, and that's around that time people, like, they opened up the developer forums and stuff.
Right.
But I think it was around June that they technically had the Alexa Skills Kit.
Yeah. So when did you build your first skill then, Eric?
It would have been that summer I started playing around with stuff, just as far as like toying with some home automation things. But as far as the first things that I went on to publish, it was started those around September of that year, right around the time that actually the first skills got published on the Skill Store.
All right.
That was April Hamilton and Joe Quinta and Diego Benitez got their first skills out, and that was like a big deal.
Yeah.
Like they got one of them out a week, and Amazon sent out emails and everything to everyone. So.
Nice. What about you, Steve? When did you launch your first skill or start thinking about building your first skill?
Well, I started building. Well, they weren't skills, so they weren't published. But I started actually hacking around with Alexa in late 2014.
Wow.
Maybe very early 2015, where I had this thing where I would scrape the utterances off of the web app in Alexa, like the activity section of the web app,
right,
and just scrape those utterances and send them to a server and parse them myself. And I built stuff to like control my lights and to integrate my Google Calendar before there even were skills.
Wow.
And then once the skills kit came out, which I've actually never used, but I think I was in one of the first batches of skills.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you were tampering around with it before then, where did you find it from? Like, where did you come across it? Where did you even understand that you can actually build something for this kind of smart device?
There is a guy named Zach Feldman, and he had a GitHub repo where he had started like doing this, where he saw that like every time you made an utterance, it would just like send it right to the web page of the Alexa web page. And so he had this idea, I could just like set up a web scraper that was just running all the time, checking for updates like on the history of the utterances. And then from there, you just do all of the parsing on your own back end, and yeah.
Wow.
So we did like Hue integration, I did Evernote integration, and he did like an Uber. He could call an Uber just a private skill for himself before there was.
Wow.
Yeah, before there were even skills like announced.
Wow.
Yeah, it was cool.
That is cool. And when did Alexa come to Germany? And were you building on Alexa before it was even in Germany?
I think there was a private invitation-only period running by the end of 2016.
Right.
And in March 2017, the devices got publicly available in Germany.
Right.
That's when we started fooling around with the SDK version 1 during a hackathon in Cologne, Germany. And that's where we started actually building stuff. And the first one, which came out, I think, in May 2017, is still one of our most popular ones. These animal sounds stuff, which are quite popular in Germany at least. And compared to today, it feels like driving a car 80 years ago. I mean, it's not the Tesla way it wasn't the Tesla way of creating skill experiences, and now it's a whole different story, I would say.
Right. Is it more like a Tesla now then?
Yeah. I mean, with the tools that are out there already, I mean, I think Stack Overflow has been a desert in terms of finding things related to Alexa back then. And I think Jeff Blankenberg maybe had already some stuff going on in 2017 on his GitHub repositories. That was our single source of truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, because you launched fairly early stuff in Germany, you then became like the first party sort of skill, didn't you? So if someone says like play the sound of a barking dog, or if it was using your
skill. We're like the dominoes of the animal sounds. Yeah. First come, first serve.
Yeah. So did any of you kind of benefit from anything similar to that? Like has Big Sky ever been the default first party weather skill for Alexa, or did any of you benefit from some of that first party stuff because you were there quite early?
Let me think. No is the answer. But there's always hope. But it's never become a first party weather option.
Right.
Yeah.
So anything that you did become first party? Yeah, Eric?
Yeah, around, it must have been 2017, December, right before their big Christmas push, Complibot got a top level invocation for Compliment Me,
right.
And I saw my traffic at that point jump like 2 orders of magnitude. So like
wow.
that's if you can get access to that, that's a serious benefit.
Right.
Yeah.
And is that still the case then?
It's shared. There are a few different skills that Compliment Me routes to, but it is still the case today.
Okay, that's cool. And how would you describe the developer or the community sort of landscape, Nick, when you first started? Did one even exist, and how would you describe it?
It was very small back then. So my very first skill that I launched was one of the first 200 in the entire market. And back then, getting a few thousand users was a big deal. And now you look at the skill store, and a few thousand users is nothing, right? You get like tens of thousands of users in order to make an impact, let alone like get developer rewards, for example. So yeah, I mean, the community has grown substantially. We started a Slack group way back when, full of developers. It started off as just a couple dozen folks in a Slack channel talking about skill development, and now it's past, I think, 3,500 skill developers.
Wow. Is that the Alexa Slack channel?
That's the Alexa Slack channel, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's been for us in Germany as well a very good source of getting help. Besides the repositories of Jeff Blankenberg, I think I met Nick in August 2017 in Germany during an event, and he and all the other folks and fellows have been helping us getting stuff out in the German market as well. That's really helpful. Yeah.
What point was it? So obviously when you started, it was a fairly small community. There was no Alexa skills kit, and really, there's no way of really telling whether this thing is going to be successful, whether it's going to grow. So at what point in time did it start feeling as though things were clicking and things were starting, confirming that this is actually something that is going to be a fairly large platform?
Yeah, for me that was December 2016. So I launched my first sleep sound skill in October 2016, and I got some pretty good natural traffic to it, just based on the name, Rain Sounds. But then, as that natural traffic grew, Amazon took notice and they started promoting it, and then it actually was called like one of the top skills of 2016, I think, around the holidays, and traffic just exploded. Like I went from having maybe 5,000 users a week to seeing like 40,000 users in a week.
What about you, Eric?
Yeah, it's pretty much that same time. There's a sort of a funny anecdote that I think kind of shows the explosion in growth, which was that the day after Christmas that year, everybody went home. The Dot had just launched, so they go open up their Dots, turn on the thing. And Amazon, the company that owns the biggest cloud provider in the world, backing all of their Alexa stuff, was not able to handle the traffic of people trying to enable skills, which actually ended up being a negative for Nick because people were trying to enable his skills and they couldn't, and so he started getting negative reviews like, I can't use this thing. But
wow.
I think that was the moment that it clicked. It's like, this is a big deal.
Wow, so even Amazon didn't quite prepare themselves for what might have happened. What about you, Steve? When were the first sort of signs that this is something that could actually work?
Yeah, I think it was after Christmas that year, but it didn't happen explosively. I just recognized it sort of organically because I had a bunch of skills out. I had a calendar integration and I had a music server integration, but then I saw that Big Sky I didn't even notice until one day my credit card expired, and so the skill I wasn't getting the API information I needed because it was being rejected. And then I started getting a bunch of negative reviews, but I hadn't actually been paying attention because I figured it was just like me and my mom using the thing. And then I realized, actually thousands of users have just sort of gradually grown to depend on this thing. And so then I was optimistic.
Wow. What about you, Tim?
I think it was right after the hackathon we attended, where we were just playing around with it, and there was one of the Amazonians in the jury after that, and he approached us and asked us. I mean, we won that competition. That was like the first momentum we had, and he approached us and asked us if we want to make a real product out of that service we've been creating, and that was like the pushing for us to go full in voice. And I would say with the first client projects at the end of 2017, we knew, okay, it's worth the invest, and we are at the right time at the right place. Yeah,
that's interesting, that, because I remember, I can't remember the first time I seen the Echo, but I remember that I registered the VUX World domain name in June 2017 because I seen it and I thought that sounds really good, you know. And before I knew you could build skills for it, I thought, imagine if you could. The first time I seen it, I thought, imagine if you could create stuff for that. That'd be fantastic, you know. It's like audio production, writing, user experience. It's everything I've ever done, you know what I mean? It's like perfect. But then so I registered the domain name. I thought I'll start a podcast to learn more about it, because what better way than an audio medium for an audio kind of another audio medium, I suppose, but couldn't find anyone to speak to about it. So in the UK, it was like there was things happening, you know. I think Jess Williams and Oscar were kind of just getting started and stuff. So there was things happening, but it didn't seem like there was a huge community until kind of I think I stumbled across the This Week in Voice podcast at the end of 2017, something like that. It was kind of confirmed that there was something there, which is obviously a little bit later than you lot. So from the end of 2017, we launched the podcast in 2018. So then now that's 2 years ago now. So in the last 2 years, what are some of the kind of like either the advancements or some of the other things that you've noticed that have kind of like been good signs for the industry? I'll start with you, Nick.
Oh gosh.
Well, you've ended up buying a Tesla from all this work, so that's one thing that's fairly obvious. But what kind of other signs did you notice over the last 2 years, or any other things that have kind of like been notable advancements in the industry?
Yeah, you know, I think the introduction of monetization is, you know, probably hands down one of the biggest things to happen in the industry. You know, as developers, and getting rewarded through developer rewards, like that was it's great. I actually still get them. But everybody knows, like, you can't depend on developer rewards that are controlled entirely by Amazon. It's completely arbitrary. We don't know, how that's calculated in a transparent way. So having control of your own destiny through in-skill purchases was really important for me as a company. So introducing that to my skills and then seeing customers actually buy the content, I think is game changing. I'm seeing conversion rates that are the same as smartphone applications, basically. And I think other folks are too. So now it's just a matter of making sure we get enough users to skills so that people can actually make a sustainable business using in-skill purchases.
What you were?
Yeah, they've solved like a lot of the technological problems that we had early on. Like some standouts there, like on the Alexa side, things like the fallback intent and intent history gives the ability to like solve problems we couldn't solve in the early days. But really, like the way I measure the last 2 years is just like the explosive growth of the number of people in the industry. I was talking to Dave Isbitsky last night, the chief evangelist for Alexa and Echo, and 2 years ago the community was small enough that it was Dave Isbitsky every week running the Alexa office hours, and so he would run that, and there would be 10 of us would get on there and try and like glean information out of him, and he would never give us any. And today he's like flying all over the world, just like talking to every media outlet who constantly want to hear about this stuff. We have multiple new providers now in Google and Samsung getting in the game, as well as a bunch of companies now trying to do their own like white label sort of situation with their own platforms. So the landscape today is not anything like it was 2 years ago.
When did it first start? What kind of things over the last 2 years do you think have been some of the most notable advancements, Steve?
Yeah, well, I agree with Nick that ISPs, like monetization, was a game changer. I just think the number of people who are the growth of the developer community, and like the fact that Samsung is like super interested in getting this space. Google seems rededicated in a way to attracting third-party developers. I think all of that shows that there's a lot of optimism, going forward.
What about you, Tim? So you started working with clients in 2017. What are some of the other notable advancements, either from working with clients or from the ecosystem or the community? What are some of the other advancements you've noticed over the last 2 years?
I think what we've been dreaming on from the very first beginning was ways of doing personalization in skills, which has been just announced a couple of months ago, that there are now possibilities to do that, actually. And I mean, that's what a smart digital personal assistant should be all about. It should adapt to my personal needs and requirements. That's one thing. And the other one is, I think that you have access to the current location of somebody. It's like location API called or something like this, right? That opens up a whole new level of voice experiences. And that's what I think we have heard that during the few days here at Project Voice, is the next thing, like getting out of the apartment, of the safe environments, going into cars, having on-the-go situations. And that's what I think could open up the next level of voice experiences.
That's a good point, yeah. It's interesting because in the last 2 years, lots of people have gone from what would be considered hobbyists to now having companies. So you referred earlier on just there, Nick, as my company. So it's kind of like the last 2 years I've noticed is that voice has been able to turn, for some people, even for me, what is a hobby and a passion into something that can provide a living. What are some of the things that you've kind of alluded to it, Tim, in terms of like the future, either the next 12 months, the next 18 months, not, we don't want to like get our crystal balls out and think what's it going to be like in 10 years time, but realistically from where we are now, fast forward kind of like 12, 18 months, Steve, where do you think we're heading? What do you think we'll see in the next kind of like 12 to 18 months?
Well, I think there's a big push towards multimodality. And in general, I think the quality of the skills and the kind of expertise that you need to build a quality skill is going to continue to increase. Like in the old days, as Nick said, it was pretty easy, right? A couple hours to get a skill out. But now, like, there's just been an explosion of the feature set, which I always, like, every day it seems like there's new features. So I think a growth in the quality of the skills and kind of the resources that are required to build a skill, I think that's going to happen. And also I think sort of this idea that skills will be more like microservices. There'll be a lot of skills connecting on the back end, which in a way might sort of be the rise of the platform over like the individual developer. I think that might be interesting and unclear exactly how that's going to work out, but I think it's going to come in that time frame, in a year or two.
Interesting. Because I think it's already, I don't know what you would think about this, but I've been thinking this week about some of the skills that get negative reviews, but the review is actually a negative review about the platform. So this skill didn't hear what I said. It's not the skill, it's the platform. And so when you're saying there that things might turn into like microservices and that it becomes less about the third party and more about the experience, if you like, it might. Do you think it already kind of is for some people already like that? So do you think that people are aware of the fact that they're using an invoked app skill when they use sleep sounds, or do you think that they think that it's Alexa playing sleep sounds, and do you think there's awareness on the consumer side about all of this stuff that we're talking about, and if not, do you think there needs to be? Has anyone got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's definitely a problem. I see reviews all the time from folks leaving a review really about the device itself rather than my skill, or even somebody who's leaving a review about a different skill and they just left it on mine instead. Like it happens quite a lot, actually. And yeah, it's a problem that we can solve, and it's only going to get worse if we move to this platform concept. But there are things that we can do as skill developers to kind of help consumers identify that they're in a skill. And one thing that I do is I have an earcon in my skills. So the first, every time you open one of my skills, you hear this nice little earcon that's unique to Invoked Apps brand, and that's how you know you're getting the Invoked Apps experience.
Interesting. Yeah, so this is definitely one of the biggest problems we're facing right now, and this is actually a bi-directional thing where Amazon doesn't let us do certain things because they're afraid of what might happen if users don't understand that they're using a skill. But then at the same time, like things happen in our skills because users think they're back at the top level. I'm actually about to drop a blog post on one of the solutions that I've been working on lately, which is the idea of sort of a enhanced fallback, where a lot of these things that users say to my skill, thinking that they're out of the skill context, really common things like asking for the weather when they're talking to Complibot. A couple months ago implemented. I just picked the top most common ones and have custom intents in there that say, in the case of Insultabot, it'll like say, it's like, hey, you're talking to Insultabot still, maybe you forgot, and then it'll insult them as it does. And then it'll explain to them how to get back to the top level. But it's a way of basically realizing that the users don't have context, giving it to them, and then still giving them some content. And so I rolled that out a couple months ago, and it's actually been really, really successful. It's caused my miss rate to go way down, and people aren't sitting there like in sessions getting frustrated because they don't understand what's going on anymore. So there are some things that we can do on our side to help with this, but we definitely need Amazon to implement some features as well on their side to solve their part of it.
Yeah. One of the things you mentioned there, Steve, is you were saying that the resources that are required to put together a high quality skill have changed, excuse me, or increased. How do you think that the consumer expectations of interacting with these voice assistants has also increased, Tim?
I just wanted to say thank you to Nick, because we got a lot of reviews that were dedicated to you, and actually quite a lot very good reviews. So
somebody good.
No, but from a user perspective, I have some things on my wish list as a user of Amazon Alexa and all the other assistants is, and referring to what Nick said, is like have more transparency. Who am I talking to actually? Who is that provider of that piece of information? I mean, we have in Germany all the GDPR stuff and imprints. You need imprints on your website and stuff like this. But actually, sometimes you don't know the author of that piece of information, and you give a review to the wrong skill, actually, maybe ending up. And that's what, from a user perspective, is very irritating for me. And name-free invocation, the buzzword discovery, of course, and having the freedom to choose my own personal first-party service provider for something, like choosing that when I say I want to order pizza, that this will launch the pizza service of my choice, and not something that's like predefined by the platform itself. And as a developer, I'm very interested in see how skill connections will work, like connecting these microservices that's even just mentioned, and encouraging Amazon to release less new features, but instead improving the ones they just released, because they give us the tools to do complex stuff. But if we do it, we are running into some issues pretty fast. Yeah. Like we are all of us advanced programmers and developers, and let us do these complex stuff and back and forth conversations that actually that's the goal of the whole platform and the whole system.
That's kind of touching on some of the stuff that Tom Hewitson had spoke about. I don't know if you caught his talk here. He spoke about all about voice, didn't he, Tim, last November, talking about this concept of closed platforms being bad for innovation. And what you're saying there, Tim, is that features are coming out, but you might not necessarily have the ability to do whatever you need to do with them, because there is a reliance on the kind of platform. Do you see the ecosystem, and not just Alexa but Google as well, because it's similar kind of situations when developing on Google, do you see the platforms becoming more open in the next 12 months, 18 months?
going beyond day one, maybe. I mean, I love that approach. That's what I want to point out here as well, is I love the approach of every day is day one. It's always day one. But at some point in the future, we could go the way to day 1.5.
Yeah.
Somehow.
Yeah.
At least.
Yeah. Fair dues. Any closing thoughts on the future of the voice industry? Where do you think we're going to be heading in the next 12 months? I know we've covered a few things we'd like to see happen. Any other thoughts?
I think over the next year, in 2020, we're going to see a lot more investment activity in the voice space, probably a lot more acquisitions. We saw a few in 2019 that were interesting, right? In fact, we saw a skill developer get acquired last year, which is rare. Somebody who only develops skills. They're not developing underlying language processing technology. They're just developing skills. And I think we're going to see more of that in 2020 as larger companies start to take voice seriously and need the talent in order to make skills for their brand and don't want to outsource it.
Yeah, I don't have any big predictions about what is coming. What I would like to see is sort of idealistically, what I'd like to see is the community go back to the way it was in the early days. It's probably not going to happen, but if we could come to some sort of like middle ground where we're kind of not cannibalizing each other, where, I don't know, we have, as a community, we have mechanisms to like prop up and support people who are doing cool things. Actually, I think podcasts like this are a great start to that. But I think that's something that could benefit all of us.
Mm-hmm. So what's changed then on the community side of things? What was
money?
Kind of money. So, but in terms of what the community was like in the glory days, as you were saying, versus what it is now, what's kind of changed? Is it that now that there's money involved, it's a bit more competitive, or
there are a lot of people who are now in the industry because they see it as a path to a payday, who they don't necessarily care so much about, like they don't geek out about the technology the way we do. They don't engage in the community. They're not like a lot of the people who have behavior that's sort of antagonizing they're not the people that are on Alexa Slack. They're not answering questions on the developer forums. They're not taking part in Twitter conversations. They're just these like nebulous entities that are out there producing things that none of us know who they are, and it's frustrating.
Isn't that a sign of the industry advancing, though? Do you think
it is? I wish that it wasn't. Or you can have other signs of the industry advancing as well without bad actors.
And on that point too, there's things that we can do as a community, and things that Amazon can do, for example, to help police the community more, to help uplift the people who are doing ethical things, right, and not promote the people who are doing these like shady tactics where they're not putting the customer first, they're not putting the community first.
Given that we've mentioned and we've alluded to the community being a little bit bigger now than it was, lots of new entrants coming into the sort of the industry, and lots of people who are probably even just building their kind of first sort of skills today. So given that you're all Alexa champions, you've all been there from the beginning, what would your kind of advice be for someone who is just getting started building Alexa skills, Steve?
Oh, that's a good one. I mean, I think it all has to start with the use case. That is, you have to find a case that actually fits well with voice. And then if you love it and you're passionate about it, just go for it. But I mean, I don't think you can force things that don't work in a voice sort of modality to work in a voice modality. So that's like the starting tip, like find the right use case.
Yeah, I agree 100% to that. Spend 1 or 2 days more into design and the concept work, and find a real existing problem what you can then solve via voice, and be more critical if voice is the right way to do it, the right interface to solve the problem, because there will be more competition in the future. And you have to invest more time and more thoughts on your design, and have to improve it. Maybe you have something released in 2017. Now it's time to improve it. because there will be more competition and it's getting harder to be first choice.
Eric, any advice for people getting started, apart from join the Slack channel? And
Right. I think sort of maybe as a counterpoint, or maybe before the advice that was just given, I think the first thing you should really do is think about something that you think would be fun, build that, expect to get nothing out of it, because that'll give you the foundation of of sort of understanding what you can and can't do with voice, and then jump into the steps that we just heard.
Yeah, kind of on that same point, when I built the sleep sounds skills, I didn't build them to get a lot of users or make money. Like, I built them to solve a problem that I was experiencing firsthand. I was just literally trying to solve a human problem, right? And, I think if you really put the customer first, you will end up being successful. And think of things that you do in your daily life that can be converted into a voice experience. Like when I started looking into the stock market and trading stocks, I thought, all right, looking up stock prices is something that you typically do on a computer. Doing that on voice would be really cool. Okay, what's out there in voice? Oh, there's some skills that allow you to look it up via a ticker symbol. Does the ticker symbol really make the most sense in a voice context? In my opinion, no. Like, you'd rather say the company name rather than remember some 3-4 character ticker symbol, right? So that is how I approached skill development and figuring out, all right, what are the opportunities that I can take advantage of to take something that exists today that we've been doing for decades, basically, and make it better for voice.
Fantastic.
And attend events like Project Voice, a Voice Summit, and local meetups. Maybe contribute to the what I call Voice First family, and share your knowledge and not keep it for you, because that's what can push the whole landscape forward.
Good point. You forgot to mention All About Voice in November.
It would have been a bit shady as well.
I'll do it for you then. So where can people find out a little bit more about you or test your skills out, Nick?
Yeah, so you can find all of Invoked App's work at invokedapps.com, or if you're looking to get a better night's sleep, sleepsounds.com. You can find me on Twitter at Nick Schwab or nickschwab.com.
Cool. Eric?
Yeah, so 3po-labs.com is my domain. I do some sort of infrequent blogging there, but you can also get links out to my various skills. I also run the Seattle Alexa meetup for any Seattle listeners. Make sure to hit that up.
Cool.
I'm in @BlackChoice on Slack and Twitter.
Cool. Steve?
LinkedIn, Steven Arkonovich. You can find me there. You can find The Big Sky and Philosophical Creations on Twitter at Phil Creations. Those are both good places.
Cool. Tim?
169labs.com, allaboutvoice.io, and vui.guru. And Twitter is a very good source of information for everyone who's new to the space of voice.
Cool.
Yeah.
Tim, Steve, Eric, Nick, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cool. Cheers.
Boys and girls.